Joining me in studio, I don't think he's going to be singing.
No.
Lubbock City Councilman running for a re-election in District 4, Councilman Jim Gerlt. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Chad. Good to be back. And let me just give everybody a heads up. There's some construction taking place on South Indiana in the Loop, right in front of Pollard Ford. So just be aware of that as you make your way in there and be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And encourage everyone to come on out tomorrow. We're going to have some giveaways, and it'll be a good time out there tomorrow. Let's talk about your campaign a little bit. We are in the we're in the week of early voting right now. How do you think things are going?
Well, I'm encouraged by the heavy voter turnout. We're several hundred ahead of where we were 4 years ago when we had the race. Almost double where we were 2 years ago.
Right.
There wasn't very good turnout 2 years ago. A non-contested mayor's race, so that affected some things. Because I've had walking pneumonia, getting over that now, I've not been able to walk blocks, but my volunteers have been greatly encouraged, and we've been working the polls some, and our volunteers, again, are very, very encouraged by that. So I'll tell you May 7th, I'll win.
The Lubbock Avalanche Journal, they endorsed your opponent in this race, and what struck me about the endorsements, and overall the endorsements I thought were fairly weak because they sounded like campaign commercials almost. I didn't hear a lot of reasons why as far as the endorsements go. In your race, one thing that I was struck about was that the endorsement did not include a reason why they did not endorse or reason why they are going against the incumbent. Did you hear from the editorial board as to why they did not select you?
I'm glad you brought that up. 4 years ago, with the previous publisher and editor, they actually brought the candidates in. Mm-hmm. We had at least a half an hour, 45 minutes, in which we got to talk about the issues. They asked the probing questions, got to know us. They didn't interview anybody this year. None of us got to appear before the editorial board. What they did was take the sound bites from the forum. Well, you had 90 seconds to respond to something, and then they sent the questions out again. Please respond due to space constraints in 150 words or less. So they made their recommendations, their endorsement, based upon a 90-second soundbite or a 150-word document. Now, we'll also tell you, this publisher came from Amarillo. They had a very anti-incumbent stance in Amarillo. The Amarillo government is called their city commission. They don't call it council, city commission. There are only 5 of them. In the last election cycle, they endorsed 3 challengers, said we need change. Well, what they got was not what they thought they were getting, and believe it or not, the Amarillo Globe issued an apology to the voters for endorsing those 3. So we've got a publisher who's got a very anti-incumbent stance. They did not even interview us. They made their endorsement based upon 90-second sound bites. So
that is odd for a newspaper.
Very odd for a newspaper.
Most newspapers, I mean, they bring all the candidates in, or as many that want to show up,
sure,
and they interview. That is odd. Well, okay, when you saw the endorsement, is there anything that and I always give people the opportunity to address who the AJ endorses. Is there anything you take issue with other than the process? Is there anything you take issue with in the story or in the endorsement?
Well, you said it also. We just give an edge to the challenger. My issue is with the process. Good grief! If you don't care enough about the local races to bring in the candidates and actually get to know them and interview them, then why even make an endorsement? Come on. I'm sorry, I have issue with the process. Now, if we had sat down with them and we'd had that half an hour dialogue and they endorsed an opponent, great, so be it. I will tell you the 2 endorsements that I've received from the Home Builders PAC and the Realtors PAC, they brought us in and we had a half an hour in which we had a chance to dialogue. They issued questions. The Home Builders really tied into me over some issues that they didn't like going on at the city. But I've addressed those issues. I got their endorsement. That was about 20 people. The Realtors, same thing, about 20 people. And they said, man, this is a no-brainer for us. That's what the Home Builders told me. So these are business people. I mean, you think about the Home Builders, they're dependent upon a strong economy for survival. The Realtors are dependent upon a strong economy for survival.
Right.
And they said, we like what you're doing. We trust you to keep doing that. Those are endorsements that I really want to highlight, and I'm proud of those endorsements. An endorsement made upon a 90-second soundbite, well, so be it.
Visiting with Councilman Jim Gerlt, seeking reelection in District 4. The last time you were here, and one thing that your opponent keeps hitting you on is the issue of the tax increase. Sure. We had a caller who called in after, I believe it was after your appearance, and talked about tax increases and being disappointed with the tax increases that he saw. How do you address that issue of raising taxes when you have a whole bunch of people who are running right now saying no more tax increases, we don't need tax increases, and it's specifically an issue in this race?
I understand. And by the way, I think one of the gentlemen who called in said he was a senior adult and couldn't stand any more tax increases. Sir, if you're listening, if you are a senior adult, 65 and over, make your way down to Lubbock Central Appraisal District and freeze your taxes. That's something that if you're 65 and older, you can do. Now on the issue, it used to be my understanding in journalism, they used to teach, if a dog bites a man, that's not a story. If a man bites a dog, that is a story. Well, on the last issue, the only thing that's been hitting is Gerlt voted to raise taxes. And they haven't been paying the fact that Gerlt voted to lower fees. The reality is it takes X number of dollars to finance our city government. We've had administrations in the past, councils in the past, who refused to raise taxes, but they found ways to get more money. That's when the fees came in. That's when other things have happened there, and that's when more debt started being piled on. When you look at the 7 years before I got on the council, our debt load went up every year, and a lot of that was through the financing of street maintenance through bond money. So Gerlt raised taxes, okay, if that's what you want to lead with, but here's the other side of it. Gerlt lowered fees. Gerlt made it possible to pay cash for water projects. For example, $1.6 million of capital improvements on our water projects, which we have to do. We're able to cash fund that because we lowered the fees. $400,000 of cash purchases of vehicles, able to do that because we lowered the fees. On a home valued at $200,000, we raised your property taxes $2.60 a month. But on your base water rate, we've lowered it $2 a month. Cash funding all these other things, not piling on debt. So, yeah, they want to hit me about that tax increase, but come and look at it. At the end of the year, you're going to have more money left in your pocket because we shaved it off of the franchise fees, which most people cannot deduct on their taxes. If you deduct items, you can deduct your property taxes. So we've moved it on one side, put it on the other where you can deduct. I really believe at the end of the year, with the changes that we've made, you've actually got more money in your pocket than less. But again, going back and looking what councils in the past, we didn't raise taxes. Well, but you raised debt, you added franchise fees. It's the same thing. I'm just being more transparent about it.
Can we get to the point where we're lowering both?
At some point, perhaps. But right now, our streets are not in really good shape. That's been an issue. We're only putting $10 million a year into our street maintenance project. If you build a new street, it's about $1 million a mile. So we need to be adding streets. Our infrastructure, that was one of the big campaign issues 4 years ago. Our infrastructure is failing, deferred maintenance. You can't lower taxes, you can't lower debt, and take care of all these buildings that are falling apart. That's economics, it just doesn't add up. What I've done, Chad, is to try and balance, keep the taxes as low as we possibly can. And by the way, we've got the 7th lowest property taxes for city in the state. We're the 11th largest city. If we had the 11th lowest, we're the 7th lowest in the state. People talk about, but we've got other taxes here, other taxes there, it add up, yada, yada, yada. Well, no, when you put it all down, it takes about 19 cents more in property taxes to offset some of those other things that are being added on there. So I've tried to balance keeping the taxes as low as possible. We haven't piled on the debt. We did issue some debt just recently, but part of that was to refinance bonds, higher interest rate bonds with lower interest rate bonds. Need to go back and look. I think it's about $25 million of that was to refinance. We didn't extend the terms. We didn't add any additional debt. But we're going to save the city millions of dollars over the life of those bonds. So we issued $114 million debt. Yeah, but not all of it is new debt. And part of it, again, is taking care of deferred maintenance. The old police station is absolutely falling apart. We've come up with a way to take care of two issues with the city hall and the old city hall and the Omnimax or Omni building for about the same amount of money that it would cost to build a new police station. I think that's being fiscally conservative.
Visiting with Jim Gerlt. Before we take the break, one more thing on the issue of taxes. Whoever wins, you're immediately going to go into budget season, it
Yes.
seems like.
Yes.
So budget season is right around the corner. I have heard chatter before that there's an anticipation that taxes are going to go up again this year. Do you think that it's too early to tell on taxes going up this year? If taxes go up this year, are you going to look for a way to lower the fees again to offset that for taxpayers?
Always want to lower the fees any way possible. In a work session we had just a few weeks ago, city manager said he's instructed the staff to come up with a way to cover the debt on the Omni or on the Citizen Tower without having a property tax increase. Not a guarantee from him, not a promise from him. Part of it's going to depend upon how the appraisals come in. Part of it's going to depend upon the projection on sales tax. I noticed in the paper this morning on the Lubbock National Bank economic forecast, retail sales are down just a little bit. The reality is it takes X number of dollars to finance a city. My whole thing is let's find the least painful way to do that. I don't want another property tax increase. Man, full disclosure, I'm 66. I have not frozen my property taxes. I have a real conflict in my mind ethically of freezing my taxes and then voting on potential tax increase. I'm not about to vote on something that will not affect me. I'm not federal government. I'm not going to pass something that doesn't apply to me. So if I do get reelected and if there is a tax increase, it will be hitting me as well. And my wife's retired. Our income has changed. So, man, I understand that. But I want to keep taxes as low as possible. But I also want to keep our city up. I don't like people griping about how bad the roads are. I don't like people talking about, man, our structures are just an embarrassment to visitors coming in here. So trying to maintain that balance.
Visiting with Councilman Jim Gerlt, seeking re-election in District 4. When we come back, we've got other areas to get into, including the police and the police department. We'll be right back. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO. Back on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 790 KFYO. We have current Councilman Jim Gerlt seeking re-election in District 4. When it comes to the issue of debt, taxes, debt, this all kind of goes together. If re-elected, how do you tackle the debt issue moving forward?
Well, part of it is continuing to not pile on debt. I've said from the dais before, we've had this great debt train barreling down the track at a high rate of speed. Well, you don't stop a train on a dime. You got to do it gradually. Same way with our debt. But we've stopped it over the last 4 years. We've not been piling on. This year, $89.5 million worth of debt will roll off. Now, the $114 million of debt that we just issued, when you take out, again, I think it's around $25 million that we've refinanced. When you take that off, then that's less than the $89.5 that's rolling off. So we're actually going to be lowering the debt a little bit even this year. So we've been tackling that. And the main thing is let's pay cash when we can. That's what we always look for. In our different enterprise funds, that's part of what adds to debt, Lake Allen Henry, LP&L, different things like that. But in some of these enterprise funds, we've got policy on how much cash we have to keep on hand. And let me give credit to the city staff. Bless their hearts, they work in an ever-changing political environment. I mean, every 2 years, the potential exists to have a whole new quorum. This year it could happen again. If all 4 people are new on the council, then they have a whole new quorum they have to deal with. Well, the next council may change their policy requirements, or they may change, we're going to do this or we're going to do that. Well, the staff's the one responsible for making sure that the money's there to take care of it. So they sometimes pad it a little bit on how much cash reserve is there to make sure if a new council comes in and just guts everything, that they can still pay the bills.
Right.
So that's a challenge that comes into place also, which is another argument for continuity, because they know how we work and we've been able to maintain that. And I think we can keep moving forward if we don't have a quorum of 4 who comes in, no, we don't like what you're doing, we're going to totally gut that. And then it's panic time for them. Well, how do we make sure we make our bond payments? How do we do this? And sometimes it's, some of the folks who run on campaign promise, I won't do this and I won't do that. And then they get in and they go, oh my gosh, I can't do what I promised. And then they go, well, I can't vote different from what I promised. So that sometimes puts our staff in a bind because they have to take care of the debt. But people running on campaigns said, I won't do that. Well, that's an issue.
Let's grab those headphones right there, Councilman, and we'll go ahead and head to the phones. We got one listener on to ask a question, and David, you're on KFYO.
Hey, Chad, how are you doing?
Doing well. How are you? Hang on one second, David. Let me. All right, we're going to get some different headphones on the councilman, and now we can ask a question.
I just had a quick question for Councilman Gerlt. Throughout the course of this campaign, I haven't heard any mention of reducing wasteful spending from either you or your opponent. Now, I know as a councilman that's one of your responsibilities. Could you please tell us any way you intend to reduce wasteful spending at City Hall?
Well, I think part of the assumption is that there's a lot of fat in the city budget. And there may be some fat in there somewhere, but I will tell you, we've been looking at it with a fine-tooth comb trying to find out where that is. Some of the things that we possibly can do, for example, in the fire department, when there's an emergency calls out for an ambulance or something, the ambulances roll and a fire truck rolls. Well, they're not always needed. One of the things we're going to have to do is change our dispatch system and get them all on we've got to change our dispatching system. So it's not necessarily important that a truck runs every time. So that's one potential that we can look at. One of the things that we did a few years ago was to combine the city and the county on the police. And instead of having a city jail and a county jail, partnering up with that. And so we don't have the city jail. So we're always looking for ways to cut wasteful spending. But I want to tell you, when you look through that budget, there's really there's not much fat in, there's not much fluff that's in there. It's easy to say, well, cut wasteful spending. Well, help us find it. I mean, we have looked. There have been people every year look at what can we do to trim this down. We'll continue to look at it. I mean, that's always the thing. We continue to look at it, but we've got really a pretty lean budget.
David, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chad.
Let's get before the break. Let's talk real quickly about the police, the Department of Justice,
Sure.
and the police. What are we looking at as far as the testing goes moving forward for the police department? How do you feel about this entire process and how it's gone down?
Well, the way I feel about it is probably not what I need to say on the air and irritate the Department of Justice even more. What our citizens need to know is that the end product, the ones who graduate from the academy, that will not change. The exit test is going to remain the same. They have to be able to meet these high standards. And we've got one of the best academies in the country. Unfortunately, we have one of the best academies in the country. So when our cadets graduate and become police officers, after they get through their field officer training, they can be hired anywhere. And that's a problem that we face, that other agencies will come in and say, hey, come to work for us. What's going to change is the entrance exam to qualify to become a probationary police officer, to become a cadet. The tests are changing on that, and that's what's different. I've got some real strong feelings about it. Truthfully, I wanted to fight the Department of Justice over that thing. But the problem is the DOJ has a printing press, and they can come up with all the money that they want to print it. And you and I will pay the bill if we fight that. So we came in and said, okay, let's come up with, the least painful way possible to do this. What we've been able to work out is a settlement outside of court. The DOJ will watch over us for a short time, but we get them off our backs in a real short period of time. So it's a reasonable compromise.
Can you hang out for one more segment?
Sure.
Okay. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Lubbock City Councilman Jim Gerlt, seeking re-election in District 4. We're visiting with Lubbock City Councilman Jim Gerlt, seeking re-election in District 4. This Department of Justice Lubbock police deal. You said you wanted to fight them. But they've got more money. they can print their own money. If in this agreement that's going to be voted on, it sounds like someone can enter police academy, but they can't graduate unless they have the same standards as before. So is it wasting city time, police time, and the applicant's time, and just going through this when they know, or the city knows, they're not going to be able to pass a test or pass the physical fitness test?
I think we're going to see a higher percentage of dropouts from the academy. I don't know if people realize how tough that academy is. I mean, it is 6 months of intense, deeply intense, not just physical, not just gun training, but academics. When you think about all the laws that our police officers have to know. Mm-hmm. Basic math. Well, even sometimes a little bit more than basic math. How many grams are involved in this? And if I pull somebody over, can I figure out if they have enough of an illegal substance if it's just a trace amount, it doesn't qualify. So there's some math involved in this. Basic communication skills are involved in this. So I'm concerned we're going to have a higher dropout rate of those who enter than those who graduate. Right now, we always have a few who drop out, get started into it, and realize, this is really not for me. And they maybe could complete the class and graduate, but they just look at what's involved in that and go, I think I'd rather make a living some other way. So I think we're going to see a much higher fallout rate, dropout rate along the way, because if you can't handle the test that we had before, you're probably going to have a hard time completing it and graduating at the end.
Is that something that the Department of Justice could come back in the future and say, okay, now you've got to lower the standards on the exit exam, basically?
I guess the DOJ can do anything that the DOJ wants to do, but right now they have not set that down as a requirement. We're not the first city, and what the people need to understand, citizens need to understand also, is we've hired this test, and it's a test that's been used across the nation. So it's not something that we made up. I mean, there's a testing company that's provided it, and all of a sudden the DOJ goes, we don't like that test anymore. So they've come in and they filed suit against other cities in Texas, and they got to us. So we're making an adjustment. I'm confident that the officers who graduate will be quality police officers. I think we're going to lose some along the way. Yeah, it'll cost us some more money as a city because once they pass that entrance exam, then they become employees of the city of Lubbock. They're probationary. They're cadets, so we pay them. And then if they don't graduate, well, then they go with payroll. So, yeah, I don't like the idea of maybe paying for people who we realize probably are not going to have a very good chance of graduating. But then there's going to be the rare one who comes in and maybe couldn't have passed that one, but get motivated, study hard, and they end up passing. That's what we hope happens.
As we wrap it up today, early voting continues out there. Give voters that final pitch as to why they should vote for you over your opponent.
4 years of actually being on the job, had 4 years of institutional knowledge, 4 years of, I shouldn't say unparalleled growth in District 4, but I haven't seen anything like this in the 22 years I've been in Lubbock. I think my leadership has helped provide the way. I helped broker the deal between the citizens, the residents around Walmart, 114th and Quaker, and now those who fought it love it. Wow, look at the explosive growth that's taking place there. The institutional knowledge that I have, why do we want to start over with someone who'll have to learn that institutional knowledge? I've got business background. Last year, the organization I'm the COO and CFO over, took in $1.7 million. I administer that budget. I've got 45 years of dealing with organizations that are similar structure. One of my friends, Dr. Fred Harden, told me one day, he said, I don't ever want to be involved in an organization where I don't have either control over employees with a paycheck or over students with a grade. He said, what you do as leading a nonprofit, that's nuts to have to try and do that. So continuity. Again, continuity. The things we've talked about today, those are things that just takes time to learn. Now, my opponent, the smart man, quick study, yeah, he'll pick it up, but it's going to take a while. There's going to be at least two, we know, District 1 and 2, who knows who's going to win the mayor's race. It may be a former councilman, but it may be somebody new. So there's 3 who have no institutional knowledge of our organization. So I think it's important to have the continuity. And truthfully, several of my friends have listened to our debates and said, you know what, there has not been a compelling reason given to oust the incumbent. I will tell you that business owners who are dependent upon a strong economy are endorsing me, the Texas Association of Realtors, the home builders back. They're the ones, they said, we need you to continue to provide a strong leadership, strong economy. So I would appreciate your vote.
Councilman Jim Gerlt, appreciate your time.
Thanks for the opportunity.